Welcome to episode 3 of the Let's Circle Back podcast. Today, I got the chance to sit down and chat with an artist and an illustrator that I greatly respect and a good friend of mine who I've worked on many projects with, Laihha Organna Moss-Novak of Loindaflow. Today, we got to discuss the bridge between staying authentic in your art and the gap between business with that art. So let's get into the episode. Is there anything that you've been working on recently or things that you've learned, some stories about your process as you head into artistry that pop up?
Yeah, I guess just right now in this season, what's been on my mind is we just came back from a trip. We were gone for a few weeks on a surf trip. And I feel like the longer you work for yourself, the more you understand that like leaving and taking a break is not as big of a deal as you think it is. I think me a few years ago would have been, even like last year, would have been really concerned about needing to pump out content and create and get a lot of things done before going so that I stay relevant or that I don't like miss a beat while I'm gone. But now I feel like even just a few years in, my mindset has changed a lot and like taking a little bit of a break and I was gone and I just didn't even worry about like what was happening on the internet or what was going on in my business. And since coming back, I still feel been back for probably almost as long as I was gone at this point, but I'm still like easing back in and it just encouraged me to like remember that it's okay to go slow. And typically this is my slowest time of year, at least for client projects. And my business is still intact and I'm actually busier than I usually am at this time of year, despite maybe taking some time off of social media and email and like updating the world. And so um that's just kind of what's been on my mind recently. There's a lot that we can talk about, but as of right now, I know that people are like ramping up for the holidays. It seems early for that, but it's not when you're a business owner or a creative or doing anything entrepreneurial. And so just a reminder to chill out a little bit and that, yeah, your business isn't going to go anywhere and it'll stay intact
Yeah.
even if you have to like disappear for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that too, because even like I think in my time in any creative endeavors, you learn that not only is it going to be okay to take off, to take time off, but it's actually a little bit necessary to like gain inspiration and clear your head and find new creative direction. Really, it's like as an artist, you have to take that time because you're not just pumping out things for the sake of commercialism, right? It's like it is that balance of, well, yeah, I want to make money with this, but also I'm an artist at the end of the day. And people, what I want to be known for is my art. And that art needs to be fueled by inspiration, which often involves hideaways or like taking off
Absolutely. Yeah.
or going somewhere else. I mean, geez, I had a friend that was a musician or is a musician still, rather. And when he would write albums, he'd like rent a cabin in Canada and literally like disappear for 3 months. Just gone, no phone, wouldn't hear from him. He's probably out in the forest somewhere getting snowed on. But that's how you come back as an artist with that inspiration. And yeah, it is funny because that balance between like, am I going to be okay if I
Yeah.
am out and I'm not cranking out content and I'm not, showing the world things and posting stuff all the time, like are people going to forget about it? But the authenticity behind what you're cranking out has to be inspired somewhere. So
Yeah.
yeah, like good on you for going on a surf trip because you need that.
I mean, not just
But
like drawing and art ideas either, but business ideas. Like, and I'm like coming back, I'm in this super like anti-grind mentality and
yeah,
feeling like, how many hours a day do I really need to work? Like, shifting my mindset to trying to be a little bit more effective with my time so that I can do the other things that I want to do. But I also think that
hmm
or at least most people maybe, or creatives especially, aren't necessarily meant to work this like 40 hours a week, really structured way. Like, I feel like I prefer to work in these like seasons where maybe I have a season where I'm just like on and I like want to work 60 hours a week and like I'm on the weekends I'm up and I've got ideas, and then like maybe seasons where you slow down a little bit, or times when I like make a lot of art and then like a couple months where I'm like super admin heavy and I'm like building out this new thing. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think it's okay to like think in seasons too, and not feel like you have to keep up with that, um, yeah, that same consistent flow of like content and work and creativity constantly the same all year. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's okay to
Yeah. And like,
hibernate a little bit.
yeah, like leaning into that feeling too. It's like if you feel the catch or the hook of inspiration, like learning to lean into it intuitively and seeing where it leads. But on the flip side, leaning into the hibernation feeling too of like, okay, well, I'm not feeling inspiration or I don't like feel anything pulling me or drawing me. And I think because in modern culture in general, like, we measure productivity based on what we're putting out, right? Like so much like what we're putting out. And if you're like, oh, I just don't feel anything. I think the problem with that is if you fight that feeling, you can put out something that doesn't feel authentic to yourself and inevitably then won't feel authentic to your audience or the direction that you're trying to head. And yeah, I totally agree. Like I've been in this like anti-grind culture thing as well, like recently. And I even wonder if that's something that a lot of creatives are starting to feel and learn to listen to, that intuition, because of that, right? Like productivity can mean rest. Productivity can mean giving to yourself and pouring into yourself so that you have the energy and the time to pour into what you're trying to put out into the world. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, but I think that's a great segue into backing up to how you started on this journey in the first place, right? So let's go back into a little bit like how you first got into your creative voice and what led you into making that creative voice a business. How did you do that?
Yeah, I'd never like anticipated becoming a professional artist or an entrepreneur of any kind. I never thought that my drawing would ever like pay the bills, but I've been drawing forever. My dad was a tattoo artist, and I feel like in my really like young formative years, that was what we did. I just had like a natural knack for it and an interest. So I was always the kid like drawing in class, and yeah, creativity was just my thing. I think people would try to like get me into other activities and I would try a lot, but there was like never anything that came as natural to me as art did. And, through high school, I was like the kid that people were asking me to draw their tattoo designs. And, people were like trying to recruit me for all these things, but it just never like registered to me that like, oh, you can. I even had like people tell me like, you could do this as a job someday. And I just thought, no. And I think a part of that came from seeing my dad like struggle as a tattoo artist and having that maybe be my only like person in mind that I knew was an artist for a living. Like I didn't
Yeah,
consider it at
yeah.
all. And it wasn't this thing that I was like, oh, I really want to do that, but it's just not a viable career. It was just like, nah, I don't want to do that. And so I ended up going to school and getting my degree in geography, and I had a focus on sustainability work. And I worked in that field for a while, like throughout school and a little bit after college. And I had a ton of fun and I learned a lot, and I don't regret my studies at all. I learned so much about how to run a business, is funny enough, through like all the roles that I had professionally. Um,
Hmm.
and I really thought that I was going to stay that course. I worked in like sustainability education, so a lot of teaching roles, but then I had like a focus on agriculture and urban farming. And that is something that is just so creative. Like, I feel like I was really drawn to the farming part of it because it is creativity.
Yeah.
You really get to just like build this world, which is really cool. And then to get to do, and teaching is so creative, like coming up with lesson plans
Hmm.
and facilitating. I just like really, really loved that and thought that I was going to stay in that. I thought I was going to maybe get my master's degree or, continue to work in higher education, be a professor, work at a nonprofit. Was really happy in that realm. And I wasn't thinking about money. Like I was just really stoked to be making a difference and doing what I loved. That meant I had to be like, I don't know, make 50, 60 grand a year and work at a nonprofit. Like that didn't really matter to me. But I was
Hmm.
also young at the time. And now that I'm like a real adult, I'm like, oh, wow, there's no way I could survive
Yeah.
off of that. I mean, some people can. I want a little bit more for myself. And in all of those roles that I had, I felt particularly motivated because I was still working for somebody else, but I was like building what I wanted to build. Like every job that I've had, really, I mean, outside of like I worked at restaurants and did all that. But once I started doing like
Yeah. Yeah.
pre-professional work, I always had my own program that I was like building out new programs and ideas and concepts. So I was always being really creative and I was always like getting to come up with whatever I wanted to create. And I had support from my bosses and things like that and peers. Then I graduated in 2020, which is when COVID hit. So we were in the thick of it. And I continued to work in one of my sustainability roles, but everything went remote. And then all of these like urban farming initiatives that I was working on just had to go on hold. Like everything shut down, and being stuck at home all the time is when I sort of got back into art. I'll backtrack just a little bit. As far as like
Yeah.
digital illustration goes, I never did any of that. Like I grew up drawing in like charcoal, ink,
Yeah.
never used color, just like black and white drawing is really dark, really spooky. And then I sort of like came out of my shell a little bit, and now I'm exploring with color a lot. But
Yeah.
in school, I was taking GIS classes for geography, and one of them was all about creative map making. So how to make the most like interesting, really almost like abstract maps more than being functional. And the entire course was using Adobe Illustrator. So
Oh,
I had never even, I was like 20 years old or something, but I'd never thought about like where graphics came from. Like I never considered graphic design. I never knew like how people did digital illustration, never questioned where that came from. So I'm sitting in this class like making maps and I'm like, whoa, I can like draw on the computer. And it was so hard, but I would like stay after class and like try to make like art and maps and stickers and stuff for all my other roles in my sustainability jobs that I had. Um,
yeah.
so I was getting really creative using that, and which just snowballed for me. I got my first like tablet. It wasn't an iPad, it was like a Microsoft Surface Pro. And I got it with the intention just to draw out farm plans and maps. And um, and then that's when COVID hit. And so I had this new like little hobby and I was like, oh, maybe I should like just draw whatever I want to draw. And it was really
Mm-hmm.
like clunky and hard to use. That's when I first started using Adobe Fresco, but using it on the Surface Pro, especially at that time, it was not a great tool, especially together.
Yeah.
But I was just drawing all day. I was stuck at home, and that just like it didn't take very long for me to be like, wow, I could like do this because people were already like requesting things from me.
Yeah.
Fast forward a little bit, my contract with that job ended and I started working at a local nonprofit here on Maui teaching youth. I was running a youth entrepreneurship program. So kind of the same thing as my previous roles in that I was like creating this program nearly from the ground up. It had a little bit of a foundation to it, but I got to kind of bring new life to it and create whatever I wanted out of it. And so um, we went the route of creating like laser engraved products. So I'd work with all these kids and we'd like come up with designs on iPads and on the computer, and they would get to draw things and I would draw things and we'd create, all different kinds of designs that meant something to them, and we'd engrave them on coasters and cutting boards and all kinds of things, and then we would go to the Sunday market and
Mm-hmm.
we'd like sell them, and then during the week I'd teach some lessons about entrepreneurship, which I felt like such an imposter because I wasn't really doing that much myself yet.
Yeah.
But I learned that I was pretty good at it. And just through like running programs, like it's very similar. Um, and through that, I taught myself a lot. I was like, I got to teach myself these skills to teach the kids. um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I loved that role. But I just knew like long term working in a nonprofit financially for me was not going to be the end goal. And I wanted something bigger for myself. And I think through like empowering the kids to like go build something of their own, I wanted to do the same. And I was
Yeah.
drawing every single day at this point. I'd wake up and like, you know, I didn't want to do anything else besides draw a lot of days, which I think was a big indication that it was like time for that to become a bigger part of my life than a hobby. And so I
Mm.
decided, and the timeline worked out perfectly for me because um, a little bit into working there at about the 1 year mark, they told me they were going to be running out of funding for my position and that I could stretch out the hours that I had left. So I had an end date and I thought, okay, I have this much time to make Loindaflow work.
Yeah.
Like how there's no option. I'm not going to get another job after this. Like this has to work. There's no plan B for me. And so I stretched out my hours as much as I could and I worked about half time. And then the other half, I was just drawing and like learning everything that I could about contracts and the in and outs of starting an art business. And by the time I hit that mark, which is just over 3 years ago, I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm flying away. I'm doing art full time, and I haven't looked back
Taking the leap.
since. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it kind of came up quickly for me, but it all worked in the timing that it was supposed to. And I'm glad that I'm here.
that's so awesome. It's so interesting because your artistry and your art has always come from a place of wanting to put something good out into the world, right? Looking back at even how you started, in agriculture and farming and many of those things, even just back to your younger days as a kid, people requesting things for themselves, right? Like, hey, can you draw me this? Can you draw me that? Like, you never really thought about the monetization of that. And yet at the same time, kind of like you said, you know, the older that we all get or the more that we dip into that entrepreneurship, like you really do realize like, okay, well, I have to do something to pay the bills here. Like I have to do something to actually make this profitable for myself, to make a living for my livelihood, all those things. Thinking about that, like when you hear the phrase walking the line between artistry and entrepreneurship, what does that mean for you personally? How do you balance those two things today?
Yeah. Well, I definitely don't think that everyone should make their creativity or their passion their job. I just think it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
And to be really honest, like I drew and made art a lot more frequently when it wasn't my full-time job, which might surprise a lot of people, but you just have to juggle more tasks. So I think like your artistry, whatever it is that you do, I'm going to try to use the word like creative because I feel like that applies to more
Yeah.
people. Um,
Yeah.
that is something that you don't need any qualifications for. You don't need anyone's permission to call yourself an artist, call yourself a creative. If you make stuff, you make stuff. That's cool. You don't have to do it professionally. You don't have to be good at it. It just is what it is. And I think a lot
Hmm.
of artists or creatives try to make it their job and they're like, well, I can't do all these other things. Like, I'm just an artist. But when you choose to become an entrepreneur, that's a big decision that comes with a lot more responsibilities and it asks a lot more of you. Being an artist doesn't require you to be anything else other than who you are. Being an entrepreneur requires you to juggle a lot of tasks, think about what you're doing really long term in a strategic way, and you have to have a lot of compromise as well. So for me, week to week planning, what I'm going to do each week, it's a matter of finding balance and having time to create freely for myself and continue that like self exploration and express myself through my art. But I also have to plan out how I'm going to use that time wisely to create like a long-term
Yeah.
foundation for myself, how I'm going to get my art in front of the right people, how I'm going to pay my bills, how I'm going to get clients, how I'm going to market myself. And my art is for me, but it's also for others now. And I have to think about that and think about, it's not selling out by any means, but I do need to think about like, what are people going to engage with? What's going to resonate with others? Um, and I like to think of that more in terms of like, how am I going to connect with people rather than like, how am I going to get people to buy my art? I don't think you need to just
Hmm.
think about, well, I can't make what I want to make anymore. I have to make what other people want and what sells. That's absolutely not true. We're all human and we have things to connect over. And if you can just think about your art in that way or whatever it is that you create, that's going to help you long term.
Yeah.
And so there's just a
Yeah.
balance there of managing your time, making sure that you still have passion for what you're doing, but recognizing that you don't just get to draw or create whatever it is that you're creating all day, every day anymore. You do have to consider a lot of other things in order to help you like make it a long-term sustainable career for yourself. So I would say
Totally.
that
Yeah.
that's where the balance comes in.
Yeah. And yeah, that balance is such a big thing because as an entrepreneur, you have to think about, okay, like what does my audience want? Of course, after you know who your audience is, right? And that's a whole
Yeah.
other discussion and thing,
Always
but
still
like,
figuring that out.
yeah, yeah. And it's always evolving, as they're
Yeah.
evolving, you're growing, they're growing into different groups and sections. And that means it's like they have different wants and needs, or they want to see different things. And that balance can be so hard because you're trying to maintain your authenticity and vision and direction yourself as an artist while also knowing that like this is your job. And so that balance that comes in, I guess it's so hard to see. But how do you protect your own creative identity in an industry that can reward what sells? Like, how do you stay true to that path that you're on as an artist while also making sure to give an ear to your audiences?
I feel like I'm finally at a place where I'm getting a lot better at this. And I think when I started, it was a constant mental battle for me, thinking about what I should be doing versus what I want to be doing, and what sells and what's working for other people, which is so hard when you're starting out because all that you have to reference is like, what are other people around me doing who are in a similar
Yeah.
position. And I think I saw a lot of other artists and I compared myself to people who were maybe getting like a lot more frequent opportunities than me because their art was just like a little bit more universal and simple and
Hmm.
like could be in any. So when I think about like my industry within being an illustrator, it's like surf shops, like any beach boutiques, anything really outdoorsy, ocean inspired. We're all kind of like in this bubble. And my art is this like kind of interesting fusion that of what I am really like my personality
Yeah.
comes through in my art. It's like what's around me. It's like beautiful tropical locations, but there's like this cool, edgy, grungy, like life on the edge, skeleton inspired work. And that's just like all pieces of like who I am that come together. And so that doesn't belong in every surf shop. Like it only
Hmm.
belongs in a few. And so
Yeah.
I would see people like other artists creating designs and doing collabs with like like just dozens of brands and I would struggle with be like I can do that. Like I can create like a ton of sellable designs really easily.
Yeah.
And sometimes I am inspired to create something a little bit more universal or simple or feminine because I'm feeling that day. But at the core of who I
Hmm.
am, that's not what I want to be creating all the time or pumping out constantly. And so I would compare myself and like wonder, should I be doing that? Is that what sells more? But the more that I've stayed true to who I am and what I chose to build my brand on, right? And what I chose to make it about that makes me stand out, I think is what's making me more successful now.
Yeah.
I think I still see a lot of people getting like a lot more frequent opportunities than me, but I think the opportunities that I have been given from like bigger brands have been more unique and they come to me because they're like, we love what you do. Like, we haven't found that elsewhere. Like, you do this really interesting thing that we haven't seen before. And they're really all about the artist's story too. And um, my story just connects through my art really well. And so I found that by staying like really true to what I want to be drawing, especially in the last 2 years, I think at the beginning of 2024-ish, I was like, okay, I don't want to just create a bunch of t-shirt designs anymore. Like that's
Hmm.
a part of what I do, but it's not all of what I do. I don't want to just create these like floating graphics. Like I want to create stuff like this, like full detail. And you don't put that on a shirt. It just goes on a
Yeah.
canvas. Sometimes it may end up on a poster. It's harder to find a place for things like this, but that's what I wanted to draw. And so I committed that year to drawing
Yeah.
like that as much as I could. And through that, I've gotten like new opportunities I would have never had before. Am I working with like a ton of brands? Is my stuff like in surf shops all over the place? No, but I don't think that it belongs there. And I think the opportunities that I am getting are recognizing how different, like the different path that I've taken. And just an added benefit, and this isn't like, no offense to anybody who creates like really like simple work
Yeah.
or things that are sellable, but I do find that when people really like create based on trends and create based on like what's selling right now and not based on like who they are as an artist, their stuff is really easy to copy and they really struggle with a lot of
Yes.
stealing, whether it's from companies or other artists. And like we all have inspirations from each other. And I don't mind if like my art inspires somebody to draw. I think that's really cool. But like someone stealing this and putting it on a t-shirt or something where it might not belong, somebody's going to
Yeah.
catch that right away and go, that's Loindaflow.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. It's easily
That's been, yeah.
identifiable. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been like an
Uh,
added bonus to me as I feel like people see my art now and they see me and they recognize it.
yeah.
And that just takes time. But
Yeah.
yeah, I found that like doing what's sellable maybe helps in the short term, but not the long term.
Yeah. And I think like, there are multiple paths that you can take, right? And when you look at it from a consumer standpoint or someone just walking through those surf shops, like how often would you even recognize the artist that did that art? When you're making some simpler stuff, you may be given more opportunities, but ultimately it's going to be recognized as either that brand that bought the art and put it on their swimsuit or t-shirt, whatever it happens to be, or like I just bought a piece of art that I think is cool, but you have no idea who the artist is, right? And because it's easily duplicatable, you don't make a name for yourself as an artist. So like, yeah, maybe you're making income that way, and that's totally okay. But I think as an artist that wants to create a legacy and have something that's memorable and even head towards iconic, doing the thing, identifying the thing from your inspiration that's missing is more important, right? Because I think a lot of us look at a lot of us that are creatives or putting things out there that we want people to see. We do draw inspiration, like you said, like to your point, like obviously there are pieces of everyone else's work in anything that a creative does. But oftentimes we look at that and we say, this is what another person is doing that's working. I'm going to do that, right? I'm going to do that thing because it's working for them. Now, the thing that you're talking about that really sets someone apart is actually observing everything that people are doing in your audience group, in that sphere, in that bubble, and saying, what's missing here? What are the gripes here? Or what isn't available here? And filling that space and constantly looking for that space. That's one of the steps and a big part of how you stand out as an artist. Now, as you pointed out, it takes longer. It's a harder climb. You're not going to see immediate financial success, maybe. And that's probably even where the starving artist thing comes from, right? Is like the passion poured into it. But looking for what's missing in the gap and saying, I want people to know my art. I don't just want people to know this is art,
Yeah.
is the struggle. But once you keep pushing, you will get there when you do that and you find your groove and you find your success. It's harder work and it takes more time.
Yeah.
And I've really noticed that in anything, right? I mean, obviously, I'm in the advertising side of things rather than the artistry. And only recently, maybe like within the last year, I've come to realize looking for what's missing, what the other people are doing, and doing something different than what they're doing. That's kind of the secret sauce into it. And so, in that vein, too, like because I know we've talked about this a bit before, but do you have any examples of times that you've said no to a project to hold your creative integrity?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to backtrack for 1 second and then I'm going to come back
Yeah.
to that because I just
Yeah.
wanted to preface one thing that like all of this depends on what your goals are for your brand. So I don't want it to come off as like you shouldn't do this and you should do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's similar to like yo-yo dieting or something when people are like, this
Yeah.
works for all these people on Instagram. Why is it not working for me? It's because you got your own like recipe that's going to work better for you based on how you want to spend your day, your week, your month, your year. And so for some
Hmm.
people who are like freelance designers, who is like, that's what I've been surrounded by. That's what I thought I was supposed to be doing. And that's where I got hung up on trying all these things that didn't work for me because it's not a match for my brand and my art. Um, so if you're somebody, and this could be like a videographer, photographer, like there's so many different industries. But if you want to be like a freelancer and come out with things and offer a service and build like a service-based business, then 100% you should do that. And I think if I went that route, I could maybe even be, potentially like making more money right now if I was like pumping out
Yeah.
t-shirt designs and not really like keeping my brand associated with it
Hmm.
and being selective about who I work with, which is going to lead into your next question, then things would be a lot different. But I decided that like all the artists and people that I really looked up to, I'm like, well, they're not doing any of these things, like these people who have an iconic brand where you look at that and you go, oh, that's this artist. Like I love their art and I love everything that they
Yeah.
do. I watched them and I thought, well, they're not really like working with a bunch of brands doing all this like freelance work constantly. They're like selectively working with brands doing like co-collaborative releases. Like now I'm doing a lot of stuff that's like Loindaflow times a certain brand, and it's something that we come out with together, which does take longer because I have to build my own brand too. I'm not just serving other brands anymore. And so
Yeah.
it's a long-term journey. And so me in the beginning trying all these things out to make money short term wasn't necessarily building my brand that I have now that's going to lead into those larger co-collaborative opportunities, and make Loindaflow itself an artist brand rather than a service that I just offer. So it depends on your business goals and what you want your brand to
Yeah.
be. So if you're starting out, like think about, like, you don't have to like rush into something. Really think about like how you want to spend your days, and like look up to people that you idolize and think about not just like how do I become like them or what strategy do I need to copy, but you have to look up to people and think, well, what are they, how did they get to where they are, and do I want my life to
Hmm.
look a little bit like theirs in terms of how they spend their time and what they're working on, which I think is like, it's so valuable that we're doing things like this because people don't know what they want to do unless they know the inside of like what somebody actually does in their business. Like people think that I
Yeah.
just draw all day long, and I don't. So if there's people who look
Yeah.
up to me and think, I want to be like Laihha someday, like these conversations are really important so that they understand there's a lot more that goes into like building a brand than just me drawing all day, and that maybe being a
Yeah.
freelance designer is how you draw all day. So there's differences there.
So true.
So
Yeah.
yeah, me
Yeah.
being selective about what I work on is really important since I want to build a brand. And so going into your other question about like, have I said no? I've definitely said no to things. And I think in the beginning, you don't want to say no to things because it's really scary. And I think it's
Yeah.
natural to say and important to like maybe say yes to more opportunities in the beginning to gain experience. And as you go further along in your career, you'll know when to start saying no to things. But an example of something I've said no to before is if a brand wants to work with me and I can't do crazy quality control on everyone's brands, but sometimes you can
Yeah.
just tell when it's something that's not going to align with you, whether the quality of the products don't look quite right, or it seems kind of like fast fashiony, or even the way that they market things. Now I like
Yeah.
vibe out a brand a lot more and like decide, is this
Yes.
something I want to like attach my name to? Like I look at how they've worked with other people before and just do a little bit of research. And, sometimes I'm like, no, that's not something I want to be associated with. So that happens from time to
Yes.
time.
Totally. Yeah. I think that vibing out is the best way to put it, right? Is like, is
Yeah.
this something that I would feel proud of showing the world or like including in my showcase? Because if
Hmm.
not, like maybe I don't want to go that direction. Gosh, I think we've all done that. I mean, there have been times that I've um said yes to projects and I'm like, God, I like you already know you're not planning on like putting it on your Instagram or like something like that. You're like,
This is not a portfolio piece. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You're like, however, right now, man, I really need some work. So it's
At the
like,
end of the day, it's still
yeah,
our job. You know what I mean? Like, and
yeah,
sometimes I work on something and it was a really good experience, and maybe not all like maybe something's like not as great as I would have expected it to be, or like because of their
hmm,
creative direction, like we didn't totally align and maybe a design didn't come out like as good as it possibly could have. But like that's work in any job. If you work for somebody else, if you work
yeah,
for yourself, like not everything is going to be like perfect all the time. So you still need to like support yourself and pay your bills. You can't just like be kind of like stuck up and say no to everything, but you'll know when there's a
yeah.
defined line of like, and you'll learn from saying yes to the wrong opportunities and wishing you didn't do it. So you just got to learn the hard way sometimes too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how you get that experience, right? Is like the years of putting in the time, seeing the subtle nuances of saying yes to something that maybe like your gut felt like you shouldn't. Um, and you can't replace that. You can't replace those years of experience doing that. Um, but in that side of things too, I mean, have you found a way who make the money work that you have to take sometimes, that we all have to take, feel creative and pump some passion into it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and kind of as I mentioned before, like I think sometimes creatives make a lot of excuses for why they can't do things because I'm right
Yep.
brained. I think that's it. Right brained, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
Right or
left.
left
I don't know.
or
Yeah.
yeah.
Whatever the not numbers side is.
Yeah.
And I used to like talk that way too. And I feel like it's just like an excuse at the end of the day, because creatives have like a skill that's so important for running a business, which is being able to think creatively and like think
Yes. Yeah.
strategically. Like it's not just like, oh, I make these things. It's like, no, you have this incredible power to like think in a way that maybe other people can't. And that's way more of a business skill than you could ever imagine. And so I
Hmm.
definitely think there's ways to make the money work, or like just the admin heavy, like all the parts of your business that aren't creating and the passionate part fun and exciting. And maybe I'm an outlier, but need I like doing that stuff. I need a break from like I can't draw all day. Like in fact, I can't
Yeah.
draw every day. Like maybe
Yeah.
there's seasons where I can, but I'd say I do more admin than I do actually like drawing or making art, quite a bit more actually.
Yeah.
And I like it that way. I need to like break it up. And that's just me personally. Like maybe I'm an outlier, but even in my past roles, like I loved like the admin side of things too. And there's ways, if you struggle with it, then there's ways to make it more creative for sure. Like
Hmm.
you can make your spreadsheets look real good. And sometimes just the
Yeah.
act of making a nice Notion to-do list in a really creative format is just
Uh-huh.
hits, you know? Like, so there's
Yeah.
ways to make it all more creative and help you get through it if it's something that you struggle with. But you might be
Hmm.
surprised by how much it's nice to have a balance. If it's thinking about your, if it's just like running numbers and doing stuff like that, there's definitely ways to make that more fun and creative, but you just got to do what you got to do. But as far as like business planning and like admin side of things, like you'd find that it's all a lot more creative than you think. You know, email newsletters, working on your website and your portfolio, all these things are like super like either visual, or you're connecting with others, you're telling your story, you're thinking about your business in terms of like where you want to be in 5 years. Like all of these things take a lot of like envisioning skills and thinking creatively and like connecting with
Yeah.
other people. So it's all creative in my head. And it's nice to break up sort of the making and the doing and the planning, and like
Hmm.
having time to sit at your desk on your computer versus like, especially if you're somebody who's like making things, like if you're making jewelry or you're I don't know, knitting scarves, like whatever it is that you do, especially if it's like I get jealous of people who like have something that's like a little more like tactical, I guess, because I do so much
Yeah.
iPad work now that it
Uh-huh.
feels like synonymous with like almost being on the computer. But I just feel like having that balance of like getting on the computer for a few hours and doing this admin stuff and then getting to like remove yourself from a screen and like work on things with your hands would be really nice balance too. I hope
Oh,
that kind of
yeah.
answered the question. I do think I'm a little bit of an outlier in that I like it and I get nerdy about it, but
Yeah. No, and I get that too because, right, like you can turn a lot of things that might not feel like they could be creative or don't even need to be creative into something creative. I mean, like a pitch deck or even a proposal or even like a report. I mean, you could turn that into something creative, make it look cool. I mean, there's an art to storytelling, even with data, and maybe that could be something that makes you stand out too, right? Like
mm-hmm.
if you don't, like if you're only creative in the obvious ways, I guess, right? Like my art is the only thing that's creative, but then you're sending people, a proposal and it's like the body of an email, whatever. I mean, that's fine. Like not
Mm-hmm.
to run down, like again, like kind of you said, not to run down people that do that. Like that's totally fine and it works and it gets the point across. But taking time maybe to make that a little more creative, what if it makes you even stand out and you get word of mouth where you are creative in all aspects too, right? Like you're getting the chance to show that authentic creative side, that side of creativity, that side of artistry that you can put in places that can make the mundane feel a little more fun. Because you got to do it anyways, right? So it's
Yeah,
like there's ways to show that or even include, I think even include parts of your brand identity in those pieces. Like if it's a
100%.
proposal or it's a report or whatever, like then they know who you are and you're able to express you're able to express more that way. But yeah, that's a great thought. Like looking for opportunities that may not seem obvious, right? May not seem like the first thing you think this could be creative. And gosh, like you said, circling back to a lot of the pillars that you're talking about, like how do I want to spend my days? that can make a lot of the soul sucking things that can be soul sucking, right? Like, I mean, even
Mhm.
accounting, if you don't have an accountant, you're doing your own accounting, whatever, like looking for ways to make that creative could even fuel your own, client facing or consumer facing side of creativity. But like putting that into places, it's just not obvious.
Yeah. And I think that's probably really great advice for people who are in between and maybe working a job that they don't love right now. Or, I
Yeah.
mean, that's the reason why I feel like in a lot of my past roles, I knew maybe I didn't want to do those all long term. But in the meantime, I was pretty fulfilled because I did get to put my own spin on things. And like it was, all of them were super admin heavy. But I like enjoyed all of that and learned how to make it really like I just like took grasp of any creative opportunity possible. So if it was a presentation or creating signage for around campus at all the different gardens or like whatever it was, like I was raising my hand to do the most creative tasks that I could. And so if you're
Yeah.
somebody who's like in a typical job right now and there's any room for you to like, it's not just like, oh, I'm stuck here until I can be somewhere else. Maybe in the meantime, while you're transitioning to working for yourself, if that's what you want to do, think about like, because these day-to-day moments are still your life right now. So if there's any
Yeah.
room for you to
Yeah.
like raise your hand for a creative task and like learn how to make some of it more fun, definitely do it.
Yeah. And you don't know where it's going to lead. I mean,
Hmm.
leaning into that could open a lot of doors that you don't even know were there beforehand. Um,
Yeah.
which is interesting too, because that makes me think about something that I heard the other day that's slightly off topic and maybe a little bit of a tangent, but when someone is presented with an opportunity, there are people out there that will say it's a handout. And I heard that the other day. Someone was literally presented with an opportunity to do something that they want to do, that they're interested in. They're like, well, I don't want to take a handout. And I'm like, huh, that's interesting. But like, yeah, you could look at it that way. Like, I'm going to take a handout. But then I was thinking to myself, aren't many things in life technically handouts? I mean, you make relationships with people, you start to do things that, maybe they will lead somewhere, maybe they won't. But it is something, let's say for the sake of this conversation, it's something creative. Um, don't look at it as a handout, look at it as an opportunity, right? Like that can be relationships is how we get where we want to go as humans in general. And so taking those opportunities, regardless of what you may think the outcome is important. Yeah.
100%. Think about all the decisions that we make day to day to get us to where we are. Like that person giving
Yeah.
you an opportunity is a result of all the work that you've been putting in. You know, when I went full time, it was like because I had found some success on the internet, all of a sudden people were finding my Instagram. Like I wish I had this like
Hmm.
sexy, like hardworking story of how I like I spent 10 years building but like I got pretty lucky on Instagram, but also like, and sometimes I used to beat myself up about that. I'm like, did I get a handout? I'm like, absolutely not. I was drawing every day after work on the weekends. I was always thinking about art. And even if my drawings were not perfect, because they were not, they were looking a little rough. I just shared them constantly and put them out into the world. And it took about like a year and a half of like sharing them every single day to hit that point. And I still have
Hmm.
to show up and do all of that all the time. And so I have to remind myself that I didn't just get this like golden ticket. I'm not just like this insanely lucky person. Like I had made a lot of decisions and done a lot of things and put in a lot of effort. And even before social media, I've been drawing since I was little and like slowly like learning how to like draw for others and like what I was interested in. And my style is accumulation of like things from when I was little to being in high school to my music interests and learning from my dad and like so no, it's not a handout
No,
by any
yeah.
means. I put in 25 years of work to get to that point and I think people forget that when there's especially like newer opportunities that didn't exist 10 years ago. They think, "Oh, like but it's everything that you've been doing up until this point for sure."
Yeah. It all comes together and it all leads you where you're supposed to go. Yeah.
Yep.
So if somebody's listening and they feel like they're trying to figure this out. They're blazing their own path. They do have a direction that they want to go, and hopefully they feel more empowered to go that direction that they want to go. but they're on the edge of compromising that voice or that direction that they want to head, what's a reminder that you would want them to carry?
I would encourage people to look like 5 years into the future and make decisions for that version of yourself. I think if you think about who you are right now and what might be the easiest way to make an income or turn your passion into your job, you might start like leaning on like quicker ways to make money or, looking at what's working for other people around you. But imagine yourself, yeah, maybe 5, even 10, 15 years down the line. Like, what do you want to build? And what's the first step to building that? And not necessarily, it's a balance, right? Because it's important to pay your bills and like to do things to support yourself in the meantime. But don't lose sight of like the bigger goals that you have because that starts now. And also that, you need to start before you're ready to. I think, especially with creatives, they think, oh, if I just take
Yeah.
one more course online, like I'll have the skills to do this, or like I need to just like make this a little bit better or like hone my craft more. And I have always been super action oriented and just like done things without permission. And I think that that's given me
Yes.
a lot of success. I put things out in the world that weren't perfect. I didn't over criticize myself. I'm not a perfectionist even to this day. Sometimes I finish something and I'm like, well, don't like it as much as I thought I did. I'm still going to put it out there because I'm a little lazy. I don't want to fix it or, like whatever it might
Yeah,
be. But like
totally.
something that's
Yeah.
like meh to me is like a good example is like I could make a drawing that I'm like, oh, this is okay, whatever, might not like it a year from now. Put it out there and somebody's
Hmm.
like, wow, this thing you made, I don't know how you like got into my head, but like you drew this memory of me and my friend. Like I see myself so vividly in this drawing of yours. And so you don't know what
Yeah.
kind of impact your work is going to have on somebody else, even if it's something that like you made a year ago that you don't feel confident in anymore, that resonated with somebody. And it's not really fair of you to keep it to yourself. So start
Yeah.
before you're ready and just like put, I don't know if I can cuss on here, put stuff out there.
Yeah.
And yeah, get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's all research and development. So just put it out there, right? Not the one thing you're gonna do. Put it all out there.
Well, I'll just say that if anyone is interested in learning a little bit more about like illustration specifically, I started my YouTube. I have a few videos up. I'm planning a bunch more. So on there, you can sort of like find more tutorials, more to come soon, but like why I use the softwares that I use and a little bit of my process if anyone's curious just about how I do what I do. But my Instagram and all that has a lot of like helpful information as well. So I make a lot of art, but I'm also starting to like expand and like helping other people make cool art too. So if you're curious about on the how to side of things, I have that as well as just like pretty drawings to look at too. So
Right on. Well, yeah, go check out Leia's YouTube channel. Go check out her Instagram, all of her channels, and you'll see a ton of cool things that will help you in your journey out there as a creative. Thanks for coming on today, Leia. Super insightful. Look forward to talking again.
sweet. Thank you for having me. This was sick.